Despite not being old enough to drive, enjoy a cold beer on a hot day or even buy a lottery ticket, scheming Sturgeon and her SNP cohorts now calling for 16-year-old children to be able to stand for Parliament in Scotland. The controversial plan would see the current legal age dropped from 18 by the next Scottish Parliament election in 2026, and it's expected to gain strong cross-party support in Holyrood. Why the SNP want impressionable young kids in Parliament is anyone's guess. Exactly what kind of insight and life experience will well-intentioned yet woefully green children bring to the table? This, of course, comes a few years after the SNP lowered the voting age in the Scottish Parliament and Council elections to just 16. Of course, it remains 18 for Westminster votes. While other UK broadcasters have a habit of ignoring Sturgeon's wild ideas, I'm intent on keeping her honest and accountable. And this is one fag packet idea that we're not going to let slip. So tonight I'm asking you, is Sturgeon right to allow 16-year-olds to become parliamentarians? Send in your thoughts to dan@gbnews.uk. Tweet them to me at GBNews. We've got a poll running there too. But we're going to debate this tonight with youthful gusto. I'm joined by Ella Robertson-McKay, Chair of Conservative Young Women, Young Conservative Network Chair Daniel Granger, and former SNP councillor for Glasgow, Austin Sheridan. Austin, you think this is a great idea, right?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think that the more we can do to engage young people in politics, the better. And if we can trust them to select our politicians in our councils and in our national parliament, then we should trust them to be able to stand as a candidate as well. However, let's make no mistake, by lowering the age to allow young people to stand, it doesn't mean that overnight we're going to see young people elected to Parliament, which is actually a shame. Even right now, at 18, it's very, very seldom that an 18-year-old could be elected to Parliament. I was one of the few that at 19 years old, I was elected to the Glasgow City Council.
And you thought you were old enough, Austin?
Sorry?
You thought you were old enough at 19?
Well, I had the life experience of being a young person, and I think that that's important to bring to the table, as well as so I think that what we need is to have a cross-section of society in our councils and in our parliament, and in all political parties, from the SNP to Conservatives to Labour and Liberals, we have lots of young people that are engaged who can make a contribution. So why not allow the public the opportunity to elect them if they so wish?
OK, Daniel Granger, from the Young Conservative Network point of view, why is he wrong? Why are the SNP wrong?
Well, from my point of view, I mean, this is the same SNP government that 3 years ago thought that 16-year-olds needed a permanent state minder under their named person policy, which was struck down by the Supreme Court. So it does seem a bit rich to me. These are people with no life experience. They're just sitting their first set of exams. And I don't know about you, but sitting in a set of major exams with life-changing consequences and then going into be an elected representative does seem like a rather big job for these young people. And it also seems to me that you're going to have young people who've never paid tax, they've never dealt with life-changing and huge decisions, they've not contributed or have that experience in public life. Don't get me wrong, young people in politics is fantastic. We want to see young people go through and get involved. But that's not at the elected level. That needs to be through their local political parties. Because, I mean, you've got one extreme where young people tend to move a lot during their development years from left to right or right to left. It's quite common. I have friends I went to school with who were ardent SNP supporters and are hardcore Conservatives. It's quite common. So I don't see that there's that mental development that's hardened up in those views. And it's just not for me. I don't think it works for Scotland, and I think it would actually harm young people's interests in politics. I mean,
Ella. OK, Daniel, thank you. Ella, you're chair of Conservative Young Women. Could you argue this is a way to get people more engaged with politics, get young people more into it?
I think we have to see this for what it is. This is a pure diversion tactic by the SNP to distract from their absolutely appalling record at local level ahead of the local elections. This is talking about people who would be eligible to run for Holyrood in 2026, which means they're 12 years old right now. And my friends and family in Scotland are much more concerned about helping the 12-year-olds catch up with the 2 years they missed of school rather than figuring out if they should be standing for Parliament when they're 16 years old. Additionally, look, I was on the Scottish national debating team when I was 17 years old. You would not have found a nerdier political keynote than I was. And I had no business standing for Parliament at 16 or 17. These are people who are going to be responsible for casework. You're going to have, with the cost of living crisis, you're going to have people in their 40s, 50s and older coming to you saying, please help me pay my bills. Please help me prevent my house from being repossessed. And quite frankly, when you're 16 or 17 years old, you have no legal right to do any of those things. So whilst, I completely agree with Austin and all of the young people who want to have young people represented in politics, 16 and 17 years old is taking it far too far. And let's face it, it's a gimmick. It's another gimmick by the SNP to distract from their appalling record.
Austin, what do you have to say to Ella saying this is all about the SNP trying to cover up for being a failed government?
Well, when you're 16 and you do legally become an adult in Scotland, you do have the right to marry. You can't own your own property legally at 16. So I don't see why you can't stand for Parliament if you so wish, or our councils. But what I can say is that this has been a long-standing policy of the SNP. So if you were saying it was a distraction or a flash in the pan thing, that's inaccurate, because it's certainly been something that we have been campaigning for a long time, and it's something that we will continue to do. And we've been successful in lowering the voting age. Now it's time to complete the process by allowing the public to decide if they've got a 16-year-old candidate in their area and they wish to elect a 16-year-old to represent them, then that's their choice. We should trust the electorate.
Ella?
I think it's really important to note that this is a typical tactic by the SNP to stir up nationalism amongst young people, to get them whipped up about a controversial policy in order to spread nationalism, in order to break up the United Kingdom. And to be honest, I think that's wrong. I think we should be absolutely letting kids be kids. These are children whose lives have been and education have been destroyed by the pandemic. The last thing we should be doing is trying to drag them into a political battle in some local association where we all know it can get pretty heated. We should let kids be kids, let them focus on their education, and when they've got the life experience to come back and run for council as Austin did, or run for Holyrood at a later date, then we should welcome them with open arms. But 16 and 17 years old is absolutely not on.
Daniel, that's the key point, isn't it? This is all about achieving Scottish independence at any cost. That's really what this is about. And Sturgeon knows that amongst the adult population, that proposal is fast losing popularity, so get them in young.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's about creating a sort of political class in Scotland that seems to be sort of skewed. You're going to get very ideological young people who can be easily persuaded. I mean, I just think personally it's a proposal that would result in a push for Scottish independence. It actually lowers the level of scrutiny in Holyrood, because you're not going to have people who have the experience to deal with the issues, and you're going to get the SNP riding roughshod over the Scottish people as usual.
Thank you all for joining us tonight. Conservative Network Chair Daniel Granger, the Chair of Conservative Young Women, Ella Robertson-Mackay, and, of course, the former SNP Glasgow City Councillor Austin Sheridan. All talented young people. We'll be hearing a lot about you over the years to come, I have no doubt.